Some of you probably figured I was referring to George Lakoff, who is a, what would you call him, a forensic linguist? I don't know. I don't know what you would call him. He's one of America's premier intellectuals. Cognitive linguist. But he's a brilliant man. He's teaches where? At University of Chicago. And he has a piece up. You can read it, and I really think you should. You will be fascinated. I couldn't stop reading this today. It's at George Lakoff, LAKOFF.com/blog. You got to read it. The title is Pay Close Attention, Trump Means Exactly What He Says. And he uses a couple of, he explains a few things from a linguistic point of view. For example, he says, I have been repeatedly asked in media interviews about Trump's use of language. So far as I can tell, he is simply using effective discourse mechanisms to communicate what he wants to communicate to his audience. I have found that he is very careful and very strategic in his use of language. The only way I know to show this is to function as a linguist and cognitive scientist and go through the details. Let's start with sentence fragments. I'm just going to do a little bit of this. It is common and natural in New York discourse for friends to finish one another's sentences. And throughout the country, if you don't actually say the rest of a friend's sentence out loud, there is nevertheless a point at which you can finish it in your head. When this happens in cooperative discourse, it can show empathy and intimacy with a friend, that you know the context of the narrative, and that you understand and accept your friend's framing of the situation so well, you can even finish what they have started to say. Of course, you can be bored with or antagonistic to someone and be able to finish their sentences with anything but a feeling of empathy and intimacy. But Trump prefers to talk to a friendly crowd. Trump often starts a sentence and leaves off where his followers can finish in their minds what he started to say. That is, they commonly feel empathy and intimacy, an acceptance of what is being said, and good feeling toward the speaker. This is an unconscious, automatic reaction, especially when words are flying by quickly. It is a means for Trump to connect with his audience. Here is the classic case, the Second Amendment incident. The thing to be aware of is that his words are carefully chosen. They go by quickly when people hear them, but they are processed unconsciously first by neural circuitry, and neurons operate on 1,000th of a second time scale. Your neural circuitry has plenty of time to engage in complex forms of understanding based on what you already know. So, Trump begins by saying, Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. Now, he first just says abolish, and then hedges by adding essentially abolish. But having said abolish twice, he has gotten across the message that she wants to and is able to change the Constitution in that way. Now, at the time the Second Amendment was written, the arms in bear arms were long rifles that fired one bullet at a time. And the well-regulated militia was a local group, like a contemporary National Guard unit, regulated by local government and with military command structure. They were protecting American freedoms against the British. The Second Amendment has been reinterpreted by contemporary ultra-conservatives as the right of individual citizens to bear contemporary arms like AK-47s, either protect their families or may be used in armed rebellion against the government. So the term Second Amendment activates the contemporary usage by ultra-conservatives. It is a dog whistle term understood in that way by most conservatives. Now, no president or Supreme Court could literally abolish any constitutional amendment alone. But a Supreme Court could judge that certain laws concerning gun ownership could be unconstitutional. That is what Trump meant when he said essentially abolish. Thus, the election of Hillary Clinton threatens the contemporary advocates of the Second Amendment. Trump goes on, by the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. Here are the details. When he starts out by saying, by the way, it marks a parallel utterance, one that does not linearly follow from what was just said, but has information relevant to what was just said. The word and, that comes after by the way, here marks the information that follows from what was just said. If she gets to pick, when said the first time, it was followed immediately by loud boos. The audience could finish the if clause for themselves, since the word pick in context could only be about Hillary picking liberal judges. Trump goes on making this explicit. If she gets to pick the judges, now gets to is important. The metaphor here with to, T-O, is achieving a purpose, is reaching a destination, with the object of to making the pick. The get in get to, she gets to, is from a related metaphor, namely, achieving a purpose is getting a desired object. You following me? In both purpose metaphors, the achievement of the purpose can be stopped by an opponent. The if indicates that the achievement of the purpose is still uncertain, which raises the question of whether it can be stopped. Now, when he said her judges, indicates that the judges are not your judges, from which it follows that they will not rule the way you want them to, namely, let you keep your guns. The if clause thus has a consequence. Unless Hillary is prevented from becoming president, her judges will change the laws to take away your guns and your constitutional right to bear arms. This would be a governmental infringement on your freedom, which would justify armed intervention of ultra-conservatives, what Sharon Angle in Nevada has called the Second Amendment solution. In short, a lot is entailed in little time on a human time scale, but with lots of time on the neural time scale. What goes on in your head? Now, remember what he said. By the way, if she gets to pick, boo, if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. Having set this up, Trump follows the if clause with, nothing you can do, folks. This is a shortened version in everyday colloquial English of, there will be nothing you can do, folks. That is, if you let Hillary take office, you will be so weak, you will be unable to stop her. The folks, nothing you can do, folks, suggests that he and the audience members are socially part of the same social group, as opposed to a distant billionaire with his own agenda. Now, immediately after, there's nothing you can do, Trump goes on. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is. Although is a word used to contrast one possible course of events with an opposite possibility. So Trump has just presented a possible course of events, that is, threatening to ultra-conservative Second Amendment advocates. Although the Second Amendment people calls up the alternative for those who would act violently to protect the Second Amendment right. Maybe, when he says maybe there is, brings up a suggestion. Maybe there is suggests that there's something the Second Amendment people can do to prevent Hillary from taking office and appointing liberal judges. I don't know. which is how I finished, is intended to remove Trump from any blame. But it acts unconsciously in the opposite way. It's like the title of the book I wrote, Don't Think of an Elephant. The way the brain works is that negating a frame activates the frame. So the relevant frame for Second Amendment people is use of arms to protect their rights against a government threatening to take away the rights. This is about the right to shoot, not about the right to vote. Second Amendment conservative discourse is about shooting, not voting. Trump never overtly used the word assassinate. He says he was just suggesting that advocates of the Second Amendment vote, and he was being sarcastic. A sarcastic invocation to vote would sound very different. A sarcastic invocation to vote might be this: the American way to change things is to vote, but maybe you care so much about shooting you won't be able to organize the vote. He didn't say anything like that, and he chose his words very, very carefully. Now, this article, is fascinating. Maybe it doesn't come across in the podcast here, but it's just, George Lakoff, I'm sure you're familiar with him. He has a blog site. It's fantastically interesting. You can check it out, georgelakoff.com/blog. So after reading that today, I thought to myself, Malloy, not only did you not know how many people stabbed Caesar to death, you also thought that Donald Trump was just uttering gibberish, didn't you? Oh, yeah, I did. Do you feel that way now? No, I have these conversations with myself all the time, and it really is starting to worry Kathy. Do you feel that way now? No, I don't. Not after reading this piece by Lakoff. So the point, of course, of all of this is that while we, and when I say we, I mean you and me, but I also mean the attitude that media have taken about what he says, from the television commentators all the way up to and including editorial writers at the Times and the Post and the Tribune and yada, yada, yada. He is seen as a moron, as an idiot. Now, does Trump understand linguistics? Does he understand the subtlety of, not the subtlety, but does he understand the workings of what Lakoff calls, I'm paraphrasing, but this neuronic transmission that goes on unconsciously when Trump talks to his audience? Does he understand that? Lakoff raises that interesting question. And he doesn't answer it. He kind of leaves it out there because he sees what Trump says as being incredibly precise. Getting from his audience, he never goes in front of a hostile audience, getting from his audience exactly what he wants, connecting with the audience, and then putting this shit into their heads where they're answering his lines before he's even said them. That's the point Lakoff is making. Consequently, the people that go to the rallies, the people who believe in Trump, cannot be shaken from that belief because, you ready? Trump is in their heads. Think about that. Trump is inside their heads to the same degree, using the same techniques that have been used by fascists, dictators forever. Although most of them were a lot more erudite than Trump, and they spoke in sentences and paragraphs, but they got inside in a different way their rabid followers' heads too.